If you have your Bibles, then turn with me to the book of John and John chapter 10. I'm going to continue this small series of messages, and whether it's picked up after I take off for a few months, I don't know, but we'll see. I know you're going to be blessed by a few really great speakers over the next few months, so I think you have someone to look forward to when it comes to that. But the message this morning, picking up on trees, you'll remember that I talked about weeping willows the last time, and Bethany spoke to you about oaks. And I'm going to just talk a little bit more about evergreen trees. I like evergreen trees, not just because I think of Christmas when I think of them. You know, we put up the evergreen in our living rooms, and for those that have real trees, there's just something about the aroma of an evergreen tree that's just wonderful. And so there is a lot when it comes to that. But there are so many lessons about evergreen trees that have a spiritual significance. If you look at John chapter 10, verse 25, I began reading before. John answered, "I did tell you, but you do not believe. The miracles I do in my Father's name speak for me, but you do not believe because you are not my sheep. My sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me." Verse 28, though, and 29 are the two verses I want to pick out. "I give them eternal life, and they shall never perish. No one can snatch them out of my hand. My Father, who has given them to me, is greater than all. No one can snatch them out of my Father's hand. I and my Father are one." Preacher that I used to have illustrated it, and he said, you know, when you become a Christian, it's like you're placed in Jesus' hand, and you're secure in there. And then it says, of course, in verse 29, "Your Father which gave them me is greater than all, and no man's able to pluck them out of my Father's hand." So it's like you're in Jesus' hand, and then Jesus is in the Father's hand. And preacher I used to have saying, if Satan could get to you, he'd have to get saved to do it. So he can't. You're secure in Christ, and in God you're really secure. And there is that about everlasting life that has so many types and analogies when you think of an evergreen tree. This is a tree that just never dies. You know, come winter time, isn't it fun? All the leaves fall off the trees, and you have all of that, and you have the bare forests, but then you have those evergreen trees. It's like they're stubborn. You know, they just still keep the green, and they still are in the forest in the midst of all of this. Evergreens are plants that retain their leaves all throughout the year. They are the opposite of deciduous plants, which have their foliage that falls off upon maturity. Many different varieties of evergreens exist, shrubs, trees. Examples of evergreens include all kinds of things. But I just happen to think about that. Evergreen trees, they never grow up and they never grow old. They never grow up and they never grow old. How many of you think you're like that? You just kind of never mature, you know? And at the same time, because you never grow up, they never grow old. You know, I've known people like that through my Christian life. I've known Christians who I looked at them and I thought, you know, they look like they're in their 80s, but you'd swear they're 15. They just have an energy about them. They have something radiating about them where they volunteer for everything. They get involved in everything. They just seem like they have more energy than the 20-year-olds. You know, they're just always there doing things. And it's as if they just have never grown up, but then they just never grow old. They just always stay the same. Now, the other thing that's interesting about evergreens is that there's no specific set of colors. I don't know why they get their name. I suppose because the majority of them are green. But evergreen trees have loads of different colors. There are plants throughout the forest who never shed their leaves, and they can have a variety of colors. Some are green, most are green, but some have red, and some have a bit of silver. Some of them have tints to them that when you look, if you put them all together, they would be very colorful in their colors. But the thing about them that makes them so interesting is that if you understand the reason that leaves fall off of trees, then you can understand why evergreens are so different. The reason that leaves fall off of trees is because as the weather gets colder, the method by which tree leaves receive their nourishment is cut off. So if, for instance, they receive water from the ground, as the weather gets colder, that water flow slows down, and they're not able to receive nourishment the same way, so the leaves wither up and die and fall off the trees, which makes all kinds of sense. But then that also helps us understand that evergreen trees are never malnourished. They never starve for the source of their nutrition. How many Christians do you know who seem to be always plugged in to the source of their spiritual nutrition? They never come to a time in their life when they are spiritually malnourished. They always seem to get food. Now, I know some Christians who are completely dependent upon Sunday morning church for their nourishment. And if they don't have Sunday morning worship to come to hear a message preached, they have a rotten week. Because they have no other source of spiritual nourishment other than Sunday morning. And I tell you where you can really sometimes learn where there are problems, because you get some people who come to church on a Sunday morning, and if the church service doesn't follow the format that they're accustomed to, they gripe and complain like crazy. You never hear the end of it. Oh, we had those kids this morning. They got up there and did their little thing, and I didn't get a sermon. I didn't receive anything. I wasn't fed. I need to be fed. And I came Sunday morning to be fed, and there was no food, And then they just gripe and complain about it because their sole source of spiritual nourishment is Sunday morning sermon. And if they didn't get that, then they have nothing through the week. They'll wither up and die before the next weekend because they didn't get something. That's sad, by the way, because you need spiritual nourishment that comes in addition to Sunday morning worship. Now, there's nothing wrong with a Sunday roast. How many of you enjoy a Sunday roast? Woo! Both heads, Yeah, we all do. We all enjoy being able to go, especially if we can go out and have somebody else serve us. That's even better, The carvery type things are great. And, of course, pubs make loads of money on serving a Sunday. But what if that was the only meal you had all week? What if that's the only thing you got was the Sunday roast? Well, certainly you'd enjoy it. And why would you complain if you missed it? Because that's the one place where you can get and sit down and eat and fill up and then go home and live off of it for the week. But some of you do that, I know. But the truth is, we need other meals in the week, see? And if we don't get them, then we are malnourished. We have issues that come up in our spiritual lives because we haven't been fed. Now, I'm going to just tell you something else. Most of you really enjoy hearing this. But actually, as a Christian, we need to eat a lot. In fact, it wouldn't hurt us if we were to eat constantly. Why isn't anybody saying amen? I was preach it! Yes! Yeah. But one of the things that I suffer from, and this is all prior to all of this, I've got I got a list of diseases if you want to hear all the things. No, one of the things I have is what's called hypoglycemia. Some of you will know. It's the opposite of diabetes. And I found out the hard way. I've said this before, but I was actually in church. Everything happens to me in church. I was in church on a Sunday morning in a very large church, and I was singing in a choir, 100-voice choir. And I was up in front of all these, there were 2,000 people there, and I was singing in the choir, and I hadn't eaten the way I should have. And I was sitting there thinking, looking out at all these people, and I thought to myself, I feel like I'm going to faint. But I don't know what it's like to feel like you're going to faint, because I've never fainted before. And that was the last thing I remember, Plonk. I went down, and sure enough, I did faint, and went for some tests and found out that actually I had hypoglycemia. Now, the thing that helps with hypoglycemia is to eat small portions of food all the time, because you're controlling your insulin intake a little bit differently. And so I like to eat all the time. I have one meal a day. It starts in the morning and it ends when I go to bed. I just kind of eat constantly. But I try not to eat. Obviously, if I eat too much, then my body will release a load of insulin, and then I'll have that crash. And some of you suffer from that, I know, as well. It's not a rarer thing. But finding out that you got that kind of thing says to me that actually it helps me to know I need to constantly be looking at like 6 little things a day that I'm eating on a regular basis, rather than having a big meal at breakfast, go without anything, and then have a big meal at lunch, and then go without anything, a big meal at dinner. That's not healthy and helpful for me if I have small things throughout the day. And spiritually speaking, I think that's a healthy attitude for us to have as Christians, that we need to look at our Christian diet in a way that we don't look at big, huge chunks, that we take little chunks and have a lot throughout our day, which will help get us through. Sometimes it can be that we get up in the morning and we spend a little bit of time with the Lord, and then maybe about lunchtime we pick our devotional up, read a little bit, and then have something before we go to bed, and that's good. But sometimes you might want to nourish yourself through the day with things like worship music. That you might want to nurture yourself through the day by having conversations with other people about the Lord. And you can watch Christian television, or you can listen to sermons, you can do other things like that. Some people in the car enjoy listening. Or, of course, now with our computers and our smartphones, we can pick up lots of stuff that's there. But being able to feed ourselves these tidbits is actually helpful for us spiritually to get us through. And if we don't do that throughout our week, if all we do is come to Sunday morning church and eat, and get what we get, then we are malnourished through the week. So when it comes to an evergreen, it's lovely to know that the source of an evergreen tree is never cut off. It's constantly eating, and therefore it is able to constantly stay green. And in the wintertime, when things get really rough and tough and sources of nutrition are cut off for some and they wither and die, the evergreen tree just kind of weathers the storm, just kind of there. I mean, you come up to it and you dust it off. There's nothing quite like it if you've ever lived in an environment where there's a lot of snow. Nothing quite like it when you get an evergreen tree and you just kind of shake the snow off of it and it's green. It's just covered with snow for a bit, but underneath it, it's still thriving. And we can live like that as Christians. We can come to a point in our lives when we might be covered with snow and other things, but when we just dust that snow off, we're thriving underneath all of it. And I hope that for each of us. Now, there are some things that do affect evergreen trees, and it's interesting because you know how it is with trees that occasionally get eaten up by bugs. We have one in our garden. We have 2 apple trees in our back garden, and one of them, for some reason, must be tastier to the bugs, because it just gets an infestation of bugs, and we always look at the leaves and think, are there going to be any apples on it at all this year, because the bugs seem to really enjoy that tree. And but evergreens, as you know, don't have leaves, and so bugs can't really eat them. And so there's part of us that says they seem to be exempt from a lot of the diseases and things that that other trees suffer from. So that must be a really good thing. It is, but do you know what they do suffer from? And this is interesting. Unlike other trees that suffer from those things, they don't, but they do suffer something that other trees seem to not suffer from, and that's bad air. Air pollution actually is the biggest problem that evergreen trees seem to have. So in areas of the country or the world, or especially when you get into tight cities like London, evergreen trees can't seem to get a foothold and really live there well because the air is so bad. I started thinking about that. Maybe you'd think of more illustrations than I would. But isn't it interesting how that some Christian people who have good sources of nutrition and they can weather most storms are most affected by what's out in the air. And sometimes that can be what people say about them. What people, talk about. And the things that are out in the air. Now the Bible says we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We wrestle against principalities and powers and talks about all of those things. One of Satan's titles is he's the prince of the power of the air. He's the prince of the power of the air. And I think, isn't it interesting how the enemy seems to be able to get to evergreen trees through the air? Through the air. If that's the case, then I suppose if you're an evergreen tree or you want to be a thriving Christian who's like an evergreen, then you need to stay away from bad air. You need to stay away from that type of criticism that'll pull you down. You need to stay away especially from those people who would kill you with the things that they say. You need to get away from that type of people. If you're going to thrive as an evergreen, you need to be away from those type of critics, from those types of people who are constantly on the attack. Now, sometimes they're not attacking you. Sometimes they're attacking other people. Sometimes they're attacking other things around you. I mentioned this before, but when I used to live in New York, I used to do some street preaching down in the street corner. I know you probably can't picture me doing that, but I did. I used to have my Bible on a street corner and I'd scream at people. Just like those ones you stay away from and walk on the other side of the road. I used to do some of that. It was a lot of fun. You didn't make a lot of friends, but it was an interesting journey. But one of the things that I saw was I'd see protests. You know how people, their big banners and things, especially if you get down in London about Westminster, you can sometimes hit it just right and somebody's protesting something. And they'll be marching along with their banners and picketing and making noise and trying to get the attention of Parliament when they do that. And as a street preacher down in the corner, of course, those people would come by regularly. And the thing I picked up on after a while was that the cause seemed to always be different. They'd be complaining about, say, the NHS, or, they'd be doing this, they want more money for the... Next thing you know, it was, nighttime tube station, they want the tube drivers not to have to drive overnight. The next thing, it would be something else. And I started noticing they're all the same people. I thought, what? It's just like professional protesters, It's almost like mob for hire. If you've got something you don't like, just tell us about it. We'll make a sign and we'll march. And I did. I really did notice a few of those marchers seemed to be in the same every time. They were complaining. And there are people like that. There are people like that who, it doesn't matter what it is. If on a Sunday morning the music's a bit loud, they're very happy to say the music's a bit loud and complain about it. But if you turn the volume down and change the music, they'll be complaining it's not loud enough. And you just start thinking after a while, can anything please you? And the answer would be no. Whatever it is, I'm going to complain about it. And they just all seem to be that way. And as Christians, I think we need to be careful to avoid those types of people who seem to be complaining about everything. If it's not one thing, it's another thing. They're just a professional mob who want to complain about stuff. And we need to kind of shy from them because what they're putting out into the air will kill us. It will affect us. We may think we're resilient. We may think we're evergreens and we can take anything. Bugs cannot bite us. But the air can kill us. And we need to be careful that those kinds of things are damaging to who we are as Christians. But I also thought, one of the big things when it comes to evergreens prefer to have full sunlight. I know they look best when they certainly have the sun shining on them, and they thrive best in full sunlight. But during times of excessive wind and dryness, evergreens are actually capable of thriving when other trees die. I thought, I like that character trait. There is something about some Christians that when it comes to adverse conditions, they thrive in those conditions, whereas other people wither up and die in them. There are times as a Christian that we have opportunity to volunteer for things and get involved in things which might be a bit nerve-wracking. Like, for instance, if you find out that actually standing up for your faith means we're going to have to go down to the council offices and we're going to take a stand for our faith and we're going to speak before our council and we're going to tell them that we believe in God and they're not going to silence us, something. And there are some people who say, oh no, I can never do that. Forget it. I'd rather deny my faith, curse God and die. I just couldn't do that. Just couldn't do it at all. But there are others who actually say, you know what? They come from the back. They're the timid, they're the shy, they're the ones who never say anything, and they're kind of in the back row and you can't even see them over the top. And suddenly when those kind of causes come up, they push their way to the front. Let me at them, And they're right up at the front. I'll go. I'll speak up for our faith. This is what David did. Do you know the story of David? This is exactly what David did. Here's this little kid coming up. He's got all of his brothers who are, got their armor. They've earned their armor, and they're facing the army of the Philistines. And here's David. He feeds the sheep. And everybody cows before the giant Goliath. Everybody's afraid of Goliath. And here's David, the sheep feeder, coming up to the front going, let me at him. I'll take him. And of course then you've got Saul stepping back looking at this little little kid and saying to him, okay, you're going to go, that's great. Here, take my armor, and puts his armor on him, and David can't carry it. It's too heavy, like, ah! And so he says, no, I don't want the armor. I've got God. And he said, I've got a slingshot, and I've killed things before with it. And I'll just take my slingshot, because I'm good with it, and I'll go. And and then you're almost like, you picture this spiritual church situation, right? Well, let's pray for you before you go. And here's this lad going, no, I'm going, man. Yeah. It's like, but you haven't got the anointing, you got all this spiritual stuff. And then here's this kid just traipsing out into the middle of the battlefield with the giant. This is it. This is it. This is the kind of thing when you see this. Some people, as Christians, they thrive in conditions where other people wither up and die. And this is the kind of evergreen faith that I think we need. We need to be able to say, when God says go, I'm just ready. I'm going to go. I'm just going to pack it up, take what I got, and go. And if it says I need all of this stuff, and I say, no, you know what? I don't have all of that stuff. I haven't earned it. I can't carry it. It's too heavy, and it's not me. But I tell you what I do have. I do have faith, and I do have God. That's all I need. and I'm just going to go. And you just kind of plow on the middle of it. And I am encouraged to read things like that. To read that there is a character trait about a tree that says when a wind gets strong, when the weather really usually hits and kills other trees, the evergreen tree thrives in those conditions, you know. Come on, blast your coldest breeze. You know, hit me with your best shot. And the evergreen just kind of puts its roots down and just says, come on, you can't kill me. In fact, actually, you blow away all the bad air when you do that. So come on. I don't like bad air, but I can cope with this. And it thrives in those environments. I think we can learn a lot from an evergreen tree. They never grow up and they never grow old. They're never malnourished. They are affected by bad air. But they thrive in conditions where others die. How many of you are evergreens? How many of you want to be an evergreen? How many of you desire to be something unmovable, unchangeable, that'll rise to the occasion to really do something whenever other people, other churches, other times wither up and die? How many of you determine, I'm going to rise up to this? Going to do something great for this. Going to come from the back, going to push my way to the front, and going to say, okay, I'm ready. I'll do this. Because that's what we need. Amen. Let's pray.